All right, today we are diving deep into 5 chapters from the book of Proverbs, and you can think of these as a master class in how to live wisely. We're going to explore everything from dealing with difficult people to what it takes to build a just society, all from a text that's thousands of years old, but as you'll see, is shockingly relevant today.
So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with folly and strife in chapter 26, then we'll move into friendship in 27. From there, we'll explore integrity, leadership, and finally, we'll get to the unique voice of Agur and his humble wisdom before we wrap it all up.
Our journey starts at the absolute foundation. Chapter 26 is like a masterclass in what not to do. It paints these incredibly vivid pictures of the fool, the sluggard, the meddler, and the deceiver. It's basically a field guide to destructive behaviors that we really need to recognize, not just in others, but maybe in ourselves too.
Yeah, the chapter does not pull any punches. This imagery is so stark, it's unforgettable. And it drives home this core idea. Foolishness isn't just about making one mistake. No, it's a self-destructive cycle. It's this pattern of behavior that someone just keeps going back to again and again, tragically unable to learn from it.
Okay, now this part is so interesting. At first glance, you might think, wait a minute, that's a contradiction. But it's actually teaching us about deep discernment. The first verse warns you, hey, don't lower yourself to a fool's level. Don't get dragged into their nonsensical arguments. But then, the very next verse says, you should confront their foolishness so they don't get puffed up and think they're wise. So the real wisdom here is knowing when to just walk away and when to speak up.
So the chapter gives us these 4 vivid portraits of folly. First, you've got the fool, who just can't take correction. Then there's the sluggard, the master of excuses, who says things like, there's a lion in the streets just to avoid work. Third is the meddler, who just loves to stir up trouble that has nothing to do with them. And finally, the deceiver, whose kind words are just a mask for their destructive plans. Each one of these is just a recipe for chaos.
Okay, so after an entire chapter on what to avoid, chapter 27 does a complete pivot. It shifts to what we should be actively cultivating in our lives. We're moving away from those negative examples and into positive, practical instruction on building strong friendships, staying humble, and having a diligent work ethic. This verse, it just perfectly captures the central theme of this whole chapter. Real friendship isn't just about having a good time or always agreeing with each other. It's about mutual improvement. It's about having relationships that are strong enough to challenge us, to refine us, and ultimately to make us better, sharper people.
This contrast gets to such a vital point about our relationships. An honest, even a painful, critique from a true friend is a priceless gift. It is so much more valuable than empty flattery from someone who has hidden motives. The chapter is really calling us to value truth in our friendships, even when that truth is hard to hear.
And the chapter also calls us to this deep sense of humility, especially when it comes to the future. Now, this isn't about being passive or lazy. It's about recognizing the limits of our own knowledge and our control. We just can't presume we know what's going to happen tomorrow, so we have to focus on living wisely and faithfully today.
And this wisdom extends right into our practical day-to-day lives. Back then, in an agricultural world, this was about survival. But today, whether you're managing a business, a project, or your family, the principle is exactly the same. Pay attention. Diligently taking care of your responsibilities is a cornerstone of a well-lived life.
So after we've established that personal foundation, our journey kind of zooms out. Chapter 28 explores how things like personal integrity and righteousness aren't just private virtues. No, they're the essential building blocks of a stable, just, and fair society.
The entire chapter is built on these incredibly powerful contrasts. It kicks off with the inner state of a person. A guilty conscience creates this constant paranoid fear. But a clear conscience, one that's born from integrity, that produces unshakable confidence and real moral courage.
So what this shows us is that a healthy society is built from the ground up, on the character of its people. The text is basically arguing that when individuals act with integrity, especially in how they treat the poor and the vulnerable, the entire community flourishes. But on the flip side, when greed and dishonesty take root, the whole system just begins to decay. So, building on this idea of a just society, chapter 29 takes these principles and applies them directly to leadership. It talks about the importance of personal discipline and the critical need for a guiding, transcendent vision for any community that wants to thrive. This contrast draws a direct line between the quality of leadership and the well-being of the public. The idea here is that a ruler's personal character is never a private matter. It actually sets the moral tone for the entire nation. Just and righteous leadership creates joy and stability, while corrupt leadership, well, that inevitably leads to suffering and grief.
Now, this is one of the most famous verses in all of Proverbs, and for good reason. The word for vision here in the Hebrew doesn't just mean having a good plan. It implies a divine revelation, a moral compass. The verse is teaching that a society needs more than just a set of rules. It needs a transcendent purpose to guide it. Without that, people cast off all restraint, and society just falls apart.
Our journey now takes this really fascinating turn. It turns out the summit of wisdom in this section isn't found in claiming to know everything. Instead, it's found in chapter 30's profound posture of humility before the vastness and the mystery of God.
So we're introduced to a totally new voice here, a man named Agor, and his teaching style is really distinct. He doesn't start with a bold declaration of everything he knows. No, he begins with a powerful confession of what he doesn't know. For Agor, true wisdom starts by recognizing our own limitations in the face of an infinite creator.
Agor's prayer is just a masterclass in balanced, centered living. He doesn't ask for power. He doesn't ask for wealth. He asks for two things: integrity, to be kept from all falsehood, and contentment. He understood that both extreme poverty and extreme wealth carry their own unique temptations that can pull a person away from what truly matters.
And then Agor shows us that wisdom is literally all around us, if we're just humble enough to look for it. He uses these memorable numbered lists, pointing to 4 small creatures to teach 4 huge lessons. The ants teach foresight. The rock badgers teach the value of a secure foundation. The locusts show the power of unity. And the spider demonstrates persistence. It's a call to just observe and learn from the world God made.
So after this quick journey all the way from identifying folly to embracing humility, what's the big picture? How do these 5 chapters really speak to us, right here, right now?
Well, when you put all these chapters together, what you get is this really clear framework for a meaningful life. It's a life that starts with humility before God, it's shaped by personal discipline and a deep commitment to justice, and it's all held together by the strength of true friendships and a guiding, transcendent vision. You see how each piece supports the others.
And that leaves us with one final thought. In our age of information overload, of social division, of constant distraction, the straightforward clarity of this ancient wisdom, it feels more relevant than ever. The only real question is, which part of it do we need to hear the most?